What's up, people of the interwebs? Several months back, I started a new series on this channel called Beginning Recording. Beginning recording as it relates to my experiences as a very, very novice at recording, specifically with a DAW such as Pro Tools or Studio One. I have learned a few things since the last time I did a video. Honestly, the reason why I have not added any more videos to this series is because my OBS screen capture software has been acting up, but I think I finally figured it out to the point that I can now actually show you some things on the screen itself, some things that I have learned. And that is the purpose of this particular video series. This is to document my journey of learning, learning about modern day recording. As you know, hopefully you have seen here in some of my more recent videos where I've been doing some full track demos. Some of them, you guys seem to have really liked. Which thank you very much. I'm very grateful for. And most importantly, I'm having a lot of fun learning about this process, learning how to use the software, and most importantly, creating music with it. So I thought that I would update this and I would show you what I have learned as far as, how to get started recording a track or recording a song in Pro Tools, just the very, very basics of getting started. So with that, let's head on out to the desk and let's talk about a thing or two. Okay, let's dive into this thing, shall we? First things first, we are going to open up Pro Tools. And this is Pro Tools 12 we are using, which is the current version. You can buy a perpetual license or an annual license. The annual license obviously is a lot cheaper up front, meaning that you renew it every year. And I think you get a discount on the perpetual down the road if you choose to go that route. Perpetual means that you pay it all, one lump sum in full. You own it, and all the any updates that come along for it along the way for as long as you have it. So, based on that information, you have a couple of different ways that you can buy Pro Tools, so that you can do what is best for you financially, because it is expensive software. The full license, the full version with the perpetual license, and and everything is I think runs about $5.99. So the annual license version is about half of that. Also, you can also buy it in either a box version, where they actually send you the box with the disc and everything in it, or you can merely download it, which is what I did here. When regardless, if you go the download route, I would, it took me pretty much an entire weekend to download and install this software. Part of that, of course, is my internet speed at home, and that would affect that time limit one direction or the other, and my computer's plenty fast enough, so most likely it was my internet connection. But so if you got a average speed internet connection, prepare for that. It will take a while to download because it is a big chunk. Anyway, so when you first open up Pro Tools, this is the screen that this is what pops up. If you are just getting started, we're going to go to Create. Once you click Create, then that's going to put you to this screen right here, and we are going to name our project. This one we're going to call Recording 101, Episode 2. And then we're going to hit Create. Flash a bunch of this stuff, and most of this pops up. My understanding anyway, this would not pop up if I were using a bigger interface. My interface has 2 inputs on it and 2 outputs. This is obviously for much larger interfaces that are designed for much larger projects. So, but me just being a guitar player that likes to record at home, mine has 2 inputs and 2 outputs, which is why this pops up. So I'm going to click no. This is just telling me a couple of things that I didn't, a couple of plugins that I didn't download, or at least that Pro Tools can't find. I think I did download them, but Pro Tools can't find them for some reason. So Click no there, and then bam, we pop up right here. This is the first thing that shows up. The first thing that I do, that I have been taught to do, this little box right here, this is called your transport. And you'll notice that for the most part, it's all pretty similar to some of the stuff that you've got going on here. So I prefer to just get it out of the way. Now, the next thing that I do is I move this over so that I can get to this other little window here behind it. And the way that I have kind of become accustomed to working is side by side. So once I get my two windows here side by side, and I'm a little OCD, so I like to make sure that everything was lined up perfectly. And I'll come over here and we'll shorten this one down to about there. And I'll bring this one over to where it's about right there. A lot of people will actually have this is your mixer. A lot of people will actually prefer to go the other way, go horizontally and set up the mixer down here at the bottom so that they can see more of the tracks. I don't like to do it that way. I like to have it this way because I want to be able to see. I can see all of my tracks here for the most part. And over here, I can, I want to be able to see all of my mixer, both, all the plugins and stuff, as well as the levels, without having to scroll up and down. So that's the reason why I like to work this way. This is all these tracks in here are set up here by default. And so I get rid of them all. And now I have a clean slate. Once we have ourselves a clean slate, the first thing that I am going to do is come up here to the track menu and select new. I'm going to create a new track. Now for guitar or bass, always, this needs to be a mono track, period. So that must be a mono track. Now one thing I have not tried yet is by running a stereo signal into both inputs rather, of my interface, and I'm wondering if I did that, like if I run out of a stereo reverb pedal or something like that, and if I ran into both inputs in my interface, if I could then change that to go stereo. If that were the case, then I suppose you could go stereo. But generally speaking, plug in one guitar and one input, mono is what you want. Audio track is what you want for that, and samples is what you want. So basically it defaults to everything that you want for recording your guitar track. Then you go create, and then we have ourselves a new track. And the next thing I do, this little arrow right here will pull up a drop down box. I like to make the track just a little bit bigger, so if you go medium, then I can see it a little bit better. And if you want to see what some of the larger sizes look like, then you can go real big, all the way up to, Gigantor size. I don't know why anybody would need a track that big. I mean, medium is plenty. Medium will allow you to see everything that you need to see very, very clearly. So then the next thing that I usually do from here is double click that right there, because we're going to rename it. In this case, we're going to call it Guitar 1. So basically, we've done just about everything that we need to do to record guitar. Let's say that we wanted to, most DAWs, by the way, are going to come with their own set of virtual instruments. I've got several to choose from. So what I do is I come over here to my mixer, and all these little blocks here are places where I can insert plugins. So I'm going to click on the top one and go to my plugin menu. We are going to use, let's go with 11 Mark II, basically the 11 rack, if you're familiar with it. This is the virtual amplifier plugins that come with Pro Tools 12. And within each plugin on here, I have found, and really with every DAW that I've used so far, you can do this with all the plugins. You can actually set various, a lot of them are going to have various different presets and stuff in them, as you can see here. So for example, if we go to American Rock, that's going to automatically pull up that, 89 SL100. That's obviously an SLO track of some kind, and then down here is your speaker cabinet. You can turn that on or off depending on what you want to do. We'll leave it on. But I've also got a couple of others that I have saved here along the way. This one here I have called JC. Let's go with the dual rectifier one. They call it tread plate because they don't have licensing for Mesa Boogie, but for all intents and purposes, it's a dual rectifier and sounds pretty close. And then, of course, the cab type, then you can come down here and select your different cab. Classic 30, the 412 Classic 30, that's obviously a vintage 3412, which in my opinion is what a dual rectifier sounds best through, so that's why I have that set there. So now we have an amplifier, we have a cabinet. Now, basically the only thing that's left is to plug in a guitar. So we plug your guitar into the input. Oh, wasn't another thing. Over here on the mixer, we need to make sure that the input is assigned correctly. So over here, most likely you're probably going to be using input 1, which is where I have that set. Should you need to change it though, this is where you would go. In other words, should you have your guitar plugged into, if you're using a 2i2 or a similar interface, should you have your guitar plugged into the right hand input, which would be input 2, then you would click on this to pull up that menu. You go to interface, and then you select the other input right here. That's all there is to it. But right now everything is correct, so I'm going to leave that there. Level is set at 0, which is where that defaults to. So from there, what we would do is hit the record button here on the track. Each individual track is going to have that, and what that does, that arms the track. You are not recording yet. That is you're telling Pro Tools that you are ready to record. When you are ready to record, ready to hit the actual record button, that one is up here. Then you would hit play, and I generally tend to start a couple of measures out, and then we hit play, and you can see the little recording thing. I don't have a guitar plugged in right now because for some reason I can't stream audio into my OBS screen capture recording software. Hopefully this will make a little bit more sense here in a minute. But once you start recording, then you get this little guy that goes all the way across, and you'll see a bunch of waves and stuff jumping up and down as you start playing. Should you, once you're done, you got a couple handy little tools here automatically with your mouse. Should you need to trim it up some, you can get close to the edge there where that little bracket will show up, and then just hold that down and drag it to wherever it needs to go. You can do that on both sides. If you need to separate it for some reason, you can click that to where just where the cursor is highlighting it, right click, and then I'll pull up that separate menu. If you did something you didn't mean to, you come up here, just like a lot of programs, you can come up here to the edit button and hit undo separate at selection. And we are back to where we started. If you screwed up and just want to get rid of it altogether, you could simply highlight it and hit the backspace button on your keyboard and get rid of it altogether. And then when you're done, of course, you would hit the stop button as you saw me do earlier, and that will stop recording. And if you're done with the track that you've laid down at that point, you can disarm it. Now, let's say that you are going to be using you're going to play along to a drum track, virtual drum track, which that's pretty much what I use all the time. So, just as we did before, we're going to come up here and create new track. Now, if you are using a virtual instrument like creating virtual drums, that's a little bit different. That one you do need to set up. That one does require stereo track, and audio track assumes, this gets a little confusing, but audio track seems to assume that there is actually something plugged into the interface that you're going to be, a physical something or other that you're going to be recording. Being that we're using a virtual instrument, in other words, we're using software, this is an instrument track. And, text, of course, stays the same. And then you hit create, and then you get that pop up. And again, we'll double click there. We're going to name that drums. And then I like the drums at the top, so I'm going to move that up there. That way all my mono tracks are together right below it. Same thing over here. You have your mixer. You'll notice this here says no input because there's, this is not coming direct from the input. So this is a stereo track, so we're going to go multi-channel plug-in on this one. And then I use Superior Drummer 3. And once this loads up, and there you have it. And Superior Drummer 3, of course, does not come with Pro Tools. This is a separate drum software. There is a smaller version of this. It's also very, very effective and a lot easier to use. Also by Toontrack, called Easy Drummer. That one's a lot more affordable and, like I said, a lot easier to use. And you really don't even, once you got your drum beats laid down through Easy Drummer, you really don't have to do anything with them when you're done. With Superior Drummer, I wanted, not only did I want the full size version, with more options in it, but I also wanted, with Superior Drummer, you also need to worry about mixing in the drum track with your final project. So I wanted that so I could gain some experience mixing drums. But you see here, just as a, this isn't a Superior Drummer 3 video, but brief rundown. That's just the default kit that pops up. Again, you got all different kinds of stuff to choose from. They've got some pretty famous producers like Andy Sneap and Bob Rock who've got some kits designed specifically for the software. I have even come up here to my default, and I got a couple of presets that I've set up based on some of those. Basically, I took some of their presets and I tweaked them a little bit and came up. This one here seems to be my favorite thus far, and this one, I think this one's actually pretty cool because it's got a whole stack. It actually stacks a couple of different bass drum sounds together, make it sound like that, if you can hear it anyway. And hopefully my condenser mic is picking it up somewhat. Same thing with snare drum. So yeah, I've used that drum kit on quite a few tracks in my demo videos. Not that I expect you to sound familiar, but anyway, that is how I do that. When you load those in, of course, you're also going to need to adjust the tempo. So these, I'm not going to go through everything in here, but one thing that I have found, when you come up here to tempo, this little tempo bar here, you click that little arrow there to the left, and this little arrow right there, you can move it up and down and control the tempo. It defaults at 105, I believe. I seem to live in about the 125, 130 range for a lot of the stuff I've been doing lately. And when you do that, you'll notice the lines here, the bars spread out. They move around a little bit as well. Bam, bam. So, which obviously is going to affect things. So, once you have your, I usually create the, I'll have a guitar, a couple of guitar riffs in my head, and I'll just put down a rough version of those here first. Then I go into the, open up Superior Drummer, create the drum track, get the tempo set to, to where I need it, and just doing it this way. And again, minimize that, and then once we have drums and everything, then we can, go back and, record the guitar track for real, and bass and anything else that needs to be recorded. Let's see, what else is handy to point out. Here's the difference over here in your mixer. See, one light strip for mono track and 2 light strips for stereo. So if you need to be able to look, if you can't remember how you set one of them up, that's what they do. I'm gonna close this out. I'm gonna go into a project that I've already recorded, and so that you can get an idea a little bit of how some of the stuff will look as it's going, and with a finished project. Okay, so now we have of course this is a this is a completed project. This is actually a track that I used here in a video probably a couple of weeks ago at this point, maybe even this past week. at the time that you're reviewing this video or as it goes live. And this one I spent a fair amount of time on. I worked pretty hard on it, and this is what it will look like. This is the of course the rhythm guitar, and I've got all my tracks and stuff named. This was for a video on the IK Multimedia Amplitube plugin software. So each of these tracks has a different amp model from Amplitube, or an amp plugin rather. Which is why I have all the comments and stuff, the details and stuff filled out over here. One thing that I did forget to point out earlier is when you are creating a new track, you can go up here to track and go to new, and then when you can go stereo, which is what you want in this instance, and you go to the master fader. And then when you create that track, I'm not going to do it for this, that will create this track right here. And basically what this is, as the name suggests, this is your master fader for the overall track altogether. All those are now all under the master fader umbrella. Kind of a cool thing to have. So, if you got some levels that are a little out of whack, you can tame them all and not, you can bring them all down without killing everything. It's just bringing the entire level down, which basically is the master volume. So for this particular project, as I mentioned earlier, I used Amplitube, and you can see there's several different guitar tracks here because I did a few different things with it. I'll link that video down in the description so that you can check it out. The track demo is actually fairly early in that video, so that you can see the results. But you'll notice every single one of these guitar tracks and the bass as well all have Amplitube there at the top. These other plugins here that you see below it are some EQ and compressor plugins and stuff, and I'll get into that in another video. But for what it's worth, this was the final product, and this is what it all sounded like all together. So hopefully you'll be able to hear this okay. So something like that is what we were trying to accomplish. But when I was first getting started, I didn't know where to start, and how to create tracks, or even to create tracks, or any of that stuff. So that is why I made this video. Now I want to be clear, what I don't want this video series to come across as me trying to educate anybody. This is merely kind of a documentation of what I am learning as I go along, and me sharing it with the viewers of this channel, and hopefully we can all learn together. So with that said, if you have any if you found this informative, or if you have any other tips or suggestions regarding anything that I've talked about in this video, please feel free to leave it down in the comments section, because I would love to hear it, and I would certainly love to learn more. And hopefully some people are getting something out of these videos, because I was intimidated by recording for most of my life. I avoided it like the plague. I wanted nothing to do with it. And now that particularly with YouTube's copyright policies and the copyright laws and stuff like that have pretty much forced me to start playing my own music, I found that it's kind of opened up a whole new world for me that I'm really, really enjoying, and it's really inspiring me to to jump back in and do all kinds of stuff that I never would have considered doing before. Even as far as demoing gear, which is, let's face it, that's the primary thing that I do on this channel. So it's giving me some ways, some newer ways to demo gear that I never had before. Even even if I do feel like I'm ripping off some other some other gear channels out there in the process. Regardless, I will leave links to everything that I discussed in this video down in the description. As I mentioned, if you have anything that you'd like to add, any tips you'd like to share, or any comments on the video itself, leave them down in the comments section. If you would like to support this channel so we can keep her going, there are links for you to do that in the description as well. And last but not least, please consider hitting the subscribe button if you haven't already, as well as the bell. It really does help out a lot, and we would certainly love to have you as part of the family. One final thing, as of this recording, it is possible that I may skip a video or two in my upcoming schedule because, if I haven't already, that is. And the reason why is because I have a very busy couple of weeks coming up. I'm going on vacation. I have a couple of other things going on before and after that. And quite honestly, I need to take some time just to clean up this mess, just so it doesn't look so much like a dungeon. So I may have to sacrifice a video or two to get some of these other things accomplished. So if you don't get an alert, don't panic. I didn't go anywhere. I'll be right back. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.